To call the City of Portage Department of Planning and Community meeting to order. If you would stand and say the pledge with me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I do apologize for my tardiness. Mr. Monroe, could you call roll?
Yes. Austin Watson.
Here.
Tom Sherry. Gina Geisers.
Here.
Sam Boyd.
Here.
Hortensio Moreno.
Here.
Charles Thompson.
Here.
Luke Wyman.
Here.
Kevin Witherspoon.
Here.
Denise Little.
Here. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from April 4th? If no corrections, may I have a motion?
A motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any reports of officers or committees?
I don't have that.
Could you call our first order of new business?
PD 0321 DSP Crossroads PD, here at Todd Lee, Katie Pepper, Wagner, Evans, 103 Lincoln Way, Valparaiso, Indiana, seeking approval of the final development plan for the DSP Crossroads PD 37.16 plus or minus acres west of 5959 Coca-Cola Avenue.
Good evening. My name is Todd Leith. I'm here on behalf of the petitioner in this matter. Andrew Essany from Dayton Street Partners joins me, and together we're going to answer any questions that you might have, and I'll explain the petition briefly. This DSP Crossroads is a planned development under your ordinance. This is the next step in the step of many. You may know or recall our first step was to appear in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. We received 2 variances for some prerequisite standards for the PD petition. We received those. Then we put together a very detailed, comprehensive plan, concept plan, together with the PD ordinance, and we brought that to you. You then approved that from a preliminary standpoint, then it went to the City Council, and the City Council adopted it as well, which now brings us to our next step, and that's to do the final development plan with engineering. And so this is phase 1 of that plan. The property's 37 acres in size, with multiple commercial style buildings, and this is the first of those. It's the western part. It is not a subdivision plat, it's all one parcel, it's the planned development, but nonetheless this is phase 1 in the building and development of that. And so we have prepared the plans, we have prepared the final ordinance, and the engineering has been reviewed both by your consulting engineering firm and by the stormwater review firm, and most everything has been finalized and resolved. There are a couple, Mr. Knutson and I referred to them as loose ends. I think there's some question with regard to some final landscaping details, and we've submitted an email indicating that we will address those. And I think there was an email with regard to some comments with regard to the actual drawing that gets recorded, the plat, if you will, of the development plan, and it was literally names underneath signature lines. It was very, very detailed, very specific housekeeping loose ends. So with that, we believe that we are in a position where we would ask for your contingent approval that we take care of those loose ends that have been identified, and we've responded to your staff with regard to that. I'm happy to answer with the assistance of Andy any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. I will now open for questions from the commission.
I just wanted to know, did you state the address of the property, so this way those who are watching live knows what we're talking about?
So I'm not sure that it has an address. Addresses typically follow structures. There are no structures on the property, but this is west of Coca-Cola on Coca-Cola Avenue and Willow Creek.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yes,
it.
certainly. It's just south of I-94.
Any questions? Comments? May I have a motion? Do we still have some questions?
Do you-
Are we making a motion to send it forward, or
Could you speak just a little bit louder?
are we sending the motion to send this forward to the next phase? Or,
I think
We,
that's,
we are the phase.
okay,
So,
It's just a motion to approve or to deny.
with the two housekeeping items, one having a plan accepted by staff for the landscaping, and then on the recording document, adding a couple names.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we approve this phase of the program.
Okay, with the two
With
contingent.
the repair, or with the additions or the corrections necessary to the staff?
I will
Did I
second.
word it right?
And the final landscaping.
And the final landscaping.
Mr. Lee, there was, I think, additional stormwater items that you were going to address as part of that too. It's just not isolated to those
Okay.
two specific items. There's a few more.
Okay, let me have these rescinded so that if we need to add these as contingencies,
Yes, so does the first withdraw their motion?
I'll withdraw the motion.
Does the second agree?
Yes.
All right, so the floor is clear. So, what's the question on the contingencies?
we have a comment that there needs to be another contingency.
Madam Chairman, our stormwater engineer had a meeting with Dayton Street to resolve any issues that were out there. Those issues were resolved on Thursday. What isn't resolved isn't been explained correctly. The issues are resolved. They don't have the good drawing because those issues need them to be corrected.
For the stormwater.
The stormwater, the landscape. Those issues are resolved between the parties.
Correct.
Their charge now is to update the drawing with the agreements that were made. Likewise, on the engineering side, they met on Friday, all those items have been resolved. There isn't a final drawing out yet, because they just met on Friday. But for tonight's meeting, all those issues are resolved. All the issues in the ordinance itself have been corrected.
So we do not need any contingencies.
I believe there's really not a contingency.
Okay.
I mean, unless you want to make a statement saying, the updated drawing is required prior to, recording the final development plan. And that's the next phase, is that this is then going to get signed and recorded.
Okay.
This is the ordinance.
Okay.
And of course, we'll be submitting for permits for the building, and if that's not taken care of, then the city's protected
Correct.
for, at that step. We just don't get building permits.
Okay.
So I think you're protected in that way.
Then go ahead and make your original first
Without
motion.
the,
Yes.
while we're waiting, I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will second.
We have a motion and a second.
Would you like me to call the roll?
Yes, sir.
Austin Bonta?
yes.
Gina Geis first?
Yes.
Sam LaVoy?
Yes.
Hortensia Moreno?
Yes.
Charles Thompson? Luke Wyman?
Yes.
Kevin Witherspoon?
Yes.
Lisa Little?
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Could you call our next order of business?
Yes, I can. M0322 RCJJ Development LLC, 14400 Lakeshore Drive, City of Virginia.
Samantha
too, sorry. My apologies.
No problem.
Annexation petition for 57.94 acres plus or minus at the 600 block of County Road 700 North. Zoning recommendation for the City of Portage County Council.
Good evening.
Madam Chairperson, may I distribute some information to your board tonight?
Yes, let me take a look at it.
May I approach?
Yes, of course. I think this is in our packet.
It is. We just wanted to make sure that everybody had a copy for tonight in case they wanted to reference it.
Okay.
May I distribute it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you have that?
I've got mine here with notes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Svetnoff, and I'm a partner with the law firm of Kopka Pincus Dolan, located at 9801 Connecticut Drive in Crown Point, Indiana. And we here are representing RCJJ Development LLC, the petitioner in this matter. We currently have tonight for you a zoning recommendation of the City Council concerning a voluntary annexation encompassing 4.24 acres located at the 600 block of 700 North, Porter County, Indiana, into the City of Portage. This is a two-stage annexation takedown because of the contiguousness of the first parcel as compared to the second parcel. The first annexation, along with the future voluntary annexation of 52.927 acres, will encompass a total development site of 57.95 acres. The proposed zoning on these two annexations will be brought in as R4 single-family residential. And as you can see from the proposed site plan that we have roughly 240 units maximum within this development itself. And between single-family homes, which are here, and then traditional single-family wide lots as well. These are going to be traditional single-family homes and then paired patio homes. Within this development, we have single-family homes, cottage homes, water features which are located throughout the development itself, and then a park which we've met with the town administration about, and we have a concept plan of the park itself if you'd like to see it. The development being fully built out will generate approximately $312,000 in yearly property collections for the city. In addition, we met with the city administration as well as leadership, and they have embraced this development, and we've already went through a workshop where we've answered many questions from the City Council itself. The annexation agreement that you have before you that I've distributed to you concerns general annexation development conditions as well as developer commitments and the developer plan. So at this time, I'd like to take any questions from the Planning Commission itself.
Okay. Before we start, Scott or AJ, I'm not sure who would like to speak for what we are approving. I think there is a little bit of a misunderstanding.
Okay, well, first I think approval is probably the wrong term. It's not approval, it is unique in the Portage ordinance. It's not part of the state statute. On an annexation request, such as been filed by the petitioner, our local ordinance requires them to come to the Planning Commission for a recommendation upon the zoning that the property should take, assuming the City Council annexes the property. Full stop.
Scott, the wording in the ordinance says the Plan Commission shall recommend to the Common Council the appropriate zoning district for areas annexed by the City of Portage. Is it being in past tense a concern that this has to be annexed first before it comes to us?
No.
It's just a matter of we're telling them what it should be if they choose to.
What would be this board's recommendation for the zone?
My other question is after that it says, if such a recommendation is not submitted at the time of the annexation, the area shall be classified as the R1 district. Does that mean if this body does not give a formal recommendation, it automatically becomes R1 should the city council take it? Or do they have the ability to ignore our lack of a recommendation and make it whatever they would like?
I think ultimately the city council, the power of what this will be zoned will be with the city council, ultimately at their level.
Okay.
I understand what the ordinance says, but I don't believe that would supersede the city council from addressing the zoning district if they chose to annex it.
Thank you.
Correct.
So,
Again, we're outside of state statute and we're into local ordinance.
Gotcha.
It's a recommendation coming from the plan.
so we are not making a recommendation for the R3 or the R4 because we would need a lot of questions to approve that.
No, you're exactly what you're being asked. If it's zoned in, if it's brought in, what does this plan commission recommend for this zone?
Okay.
The petitioner is asking for R4, but that we can recommend any of the residential. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you're here to recommend, technically, I don't even think you're restricted to residential, but yes, you're here to recommend the proper zoning if the city council were to annex.
Gotcha.
Okay. Since you're the attorney for the Porter County Commissioners, how is this going to affect the Willow Creek extension?
It won't.
Where is the Willow Creek extension going?
I don't know yet. The route's not established.
Okay.
Or it hasn't been chosen. There's 3 route options.
Okay. I will now open to the commission. Any questions?
Reading the fiscal plan for the organization and extension of services that was proposed for the annexation, it says, and this is in the top paragraph, where the plan references 4.24 acres, it shall be understood that it applies to the total annexation of 57.95 acres. When you were speaking, you also said the 4.24 acres number. Could you clarify why there's the 2 different numbers being used?
Here. Hold on one second. I'm gonna get a better map for you. There's like a 4-acre sliver, which encompasses this part, which we have to take down first because it's contiguous to the city.
Okay.
And then the 52 acres then is in the back part, and then that would be annexed in a separate annexation. So
Okay.
that gives us a total of approximately 57.95 acres.
Gotcha. Oh, no, I got it. So you're saying it's actually 2 annexations
It's gonna
then?
be 2 annex. This is the first.
But you gotta do one first, then the others that they
Right, you have
touch
to have
when you do it.
contiguousness to annex into the city itself.
Thank you. When it gets into the provisions for municipal services under fire protection, it says, while some additional burden for the town of St. John will likely be created for fire protection. Is that a typo, or did you guys mix up something from St. John in this petition?
That's a
I thought
typo.
that.
That's supposed to be City of Portage.
I was just trying to check to make sure, is there any concern some of your numbers might have been based on whatever St. John petition was being worked
All
on
the
at the
numbers are
time?
based on City of Portage. That was simply a typo.
Thank you.
I apologize.
In the site data plan, you've got the same one you've got there in the big thing. It says that there'd be a total of, you're planning on a total of 233 units, is that correct?
Between 200, I think there's a range that we gave in the actual fiscal plan itself. I think it was between 230 and 200 and, let me look 1 second, please.
Between 227 and 240 units.
So I was going to say, later on then, when you do the math on the numbers, so for example, when it talks about the monthly fee for the trash, it says that it's estimated that it would bring in approximately 2,620 per the total for that month there. The trouble is when you multiply that, it actually comes to 4,485.25. And so again, I just kind of did the math backwards, and that estimate really only works if it's 240 units. Similar with later when it gets to the one about the parked impact fee. To get what's estimated, it would have to be just using the straight math, 239.4, so pretty close to the 240.
We're
So,
going off an estimate of 240 units being built out
so
of.
you went with the maximum for the estimate, but you might be making less than the 240 that's estimated?
Correct.
Why did you choose to go with an R4 designation? According to the ordinance, R4 is for city core residential, not taking the intent for an R4 district.
Because we have not only single-family usage, but also single-family, and then what we'll call is cottage home development. So what we wanted to do was have a usage that can encompass all that together. Instead of going with a PUD, we went with this development. Additionally, what we're submitting in your plans and what we're submitting in the annexation agreement, and the concept plan here is what we're sticking to. This is not going to change. So.
But if it's zoned for R4, it doesn't have to follow this plan, though. I mean, he's saying that, but I mean, they could very well, after it's rezoned, if it gets zoned to R4, they'd have the ability to submit something different than this.
Totally.
And the Plan Commission, we wouldn't be able to stop that if it's zoned R4, is that correct?
Correct. Well, once the city council, they will not have to come back to the BZA for any of the variances. So they're skipping that step totally with this agreement.
Wait, what step are they skipping?
Yeah, I'm confused.
Once, if the city council approves this
And annexes the property.
and annexes the property, they do not have to come back in front of the BZA.
What will you go in front of the BZA for?
Because we're approving the R4. If
Well-
we approve the R4, those standards are met.
That's, yeah, and they would be required to follow our R4 ordinance.
Correct, but they're skipping going to the BZA and being
I see what you're
approved
saying.
by the different entities in Portage.
If it was zoned something else, you mean? Yeah.
You mean instead of having it rezoned?
Correct. If we say, yes, we will give you the R4 zoning, we can't say we want an 8-foot side yard setbacks. It's done.
It's whatever's in R4 zoning.
Correct.
Meet the setbacks.
Correct.
That's correct.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, I was looking to see if anybody else had questions. I know, Gina.
Questions regarding lift stations, who's responsible for that?
This is Steve Kill. He's the developer representative of our CJJ.
The lift station ultimately would be part of the city responsibility. It would be dedicated to the city to take care of if there was a lift station. So.
And who would be paying for that lift station?
Well, we would install the lift station to whatever standards the city has for the lift stations.
And then who would be responsible for running the piping to the city hookup?
We would. That all falls on our development responsibilities. The installation of all infrastructure.
So you would be paying for the connection from here to all the way there?
So, yes, we would have to connect our development to the sanitary sewer system. That is correct, yes.
Because right now it's currently county property. Who would be, what type of drainage and would you be using?
Well, that's why we're seeking the annex, because we want to follow all the city standards. And that's why we're going through the annexation process to the city, so that we can, follow the city standards for drainage, for water, for sanitary sewer. Well, water is Indiana American, but so we can follow all of the city requirements for our utilities, as well as road construction, things like that, curb profiles, all of that.
And I have a question regarding the park, according to the map.
Yes.
Why would you have the park all the way at the very front of the subdivision when?
Well, I
all
was
these
requested
homes
to
and
do that by the city council.
Pardon me?
I was requested to place the park there.
Okay.
to make, so there would be a better connection for, I believe, the bicycle trail, the pedestrian.
Connectivity with the city as well.
Yeah, that was there by request.
From the city council?
Yeah.
City council and administration.
I think the council president, if I'm not mistaken, yes. Asked if we could put the park up to the north side of the subdivision.
Was that asked at a city council meeting or just in like a separate meeting?
It was kind of a staff meeting, and just said, hey, is there any way the park could be up north? I mean, the park actually could go wherever the city wants it to go. It really doesn't matter. It's just there because there was some connectivity issues about.
I mean, I'm a little
future bike
concerned
trails.
about the park being so close to that road. I mean, that's a pretty busy road, and you got a neighborhood on the other side. You could have kids trying to cross the street and things, and that just looks like kind of a rough spot for a park, considering the number of people it might bring in from the north. Not that it's a bad thing for kids to play in a playground that's accessible, it's just that is kind of a safety concern for me.
Yeah, I mean, the location of the park, I think the important thing to note is that if you look in the annexation agreement, we are agreeing to build a park. Somewhat, you know, we're looking at this concept plan and everything has to be generally consistent, but moving the location of the park, if that's what everybody wanted, is not a big deal.
Would the park be
That park
maintained
can
by
go
a
anywhere in the
HOA or
development.
by the city once it's done?
I'm sorry?
Would the park be maintained by like an HOA for the neighborhood or by the city once it's done?
Well, the park, the way that the park would be dedicated to the city. So it would be city property, but the HOA is going to assume all maintenance responsibilities.
And the developer's gonna build the park.
If something were to happen to the HOA down the road, the city would assume responsibility for it? Is that the most likely outcome if something were to happen?
It depends on how the covenants are written. So,
The covenants are written where the HOA would have maintenance. I know that was a
so in other
concern.
words, if the covenants had a provision in it in which if the HOA became default, the city had the ability to go in and enforce upon the HOA, then the HOA and the property owners within the subdivision would still be responsible for the maintenance of the park. That would be an addition or a subtraction from the covenants at that point.
I think I'm a little concerned just even for it having an HOA, and I'm for HOAs, but this is what you're proposing with the R4. These are such small lots. It's so many different, properties, and you said some of them are paired patio homes, or with both?
That is incorrect. They are all single family.
They all single family? I'm sorry.
Detached homes.
Detached
That's
homes,
correct.
gotcha.
Yes.
But just, it's an awful lot, and with them being so small, I could see this being the kind of neighborhood where people move in and out, maybe like a young couple gets like a starter home, they stay for 5 years, people start moving in and out over time. I could just see that be hard to maintain an HOA with such small lots and so many families in there. That's just my thoughts, to the commission, just to consider.
Yeah.
Just as a clarification, AJ, did the city council request that the park be up there?
I was not in that meeting. I have been in subsequent meetings where that statement was made that I was part of. So I was involved in the second or third meeting, and the first time I saw the concept plan, the park was at the north end of the project.
Okay, because in your agreement that you're putting before us, it states that this is the plan.
It says that the end result should be generally consistent with the plan, which means that if the park were to move, I just want to make sure we're clear about this. If the park goes from here to here to here to here to here, it makes no difference to us.
Okay.
We are not tied to that park location, just so everybody knows that. That is completely up to the city where they want that park located. I'm just showing it there because that's what, it was suggested that it go up north for connectivity purposes for a future bicycle pedestrian path. So, but believe me, the location of it makes no difference.
I have a
I
question.
just know we are going to have one. We will build one though, yes.
I have a question for you. The square footage range for the homes, it shows in this document 1,421 square feet to 2,836 square feet. When you put in the R4 sections, those smaller lots, if the people that are gonna purchase in that property, if they option for the larger home, is there enough room in those properties to hold a house this size and not be a fire concern?
Well, what we're proposing, and that's why we passed out the new annexation agreement, right here is where you're gonna have that up here. These homes are gonna start at 1,400 square foot. These are contemplated to be about 1,400 to maybe 2,100 square foot for the cottage. So it's just a smaller single-family home is all it is. This is where actually the more traditional, larger single-family homes can be built, would be up here. These are contemplated to start about 1,400 square foot. And like I said, they're probably gonna get maybe 2,100 square foot. Somewhere in that range would be the max.
But if you did have somebody that wanted a 2,800 square foot
They would
in
move
those
up here.
areas down there, let's say that's all full, it's not keeping you from being able to put them down there.
We're confined by geography. I don't know that we could. We couldn't fit that house on these lots. It maintains the front yard, rear yard, side yard setback.
And that
So-
was his question.
Yeah, we couldn't, we wouldn't do it, yeah.
Question, the larger end size home
Yeah.
would not fit towards the bottom of that subdivision.
Correct. We wouldn't even, that would not even be an option to build that, a 3,000, close to 3,000 square foot down there. That's not what it's designed for. The larger homes are designed for the north half of the subdivision, which is, again, more of maybe your traditional is what you consider, even though they're all gonna be single-family detached homes.
Do you have a footprint for that? Because I don't think the 1,900 square foot would fit on a 70-foot wide lot.
Thank you.
The homes are, I think you're looking at them, right?
Wait, what page? Where'd the graph go? 17. On a 70-foot wide lot, do you know what the footprint is for that?
I don't have the architectural plans with me, no, but they typically build those all over on this size lot, so.
It's gonna, well, with the 5 foot, I mean, I'm not really sure if it's gonna fit. And I work in new construction, so that's why I'm asking the question.
It will fit, to answer your question, yes.
Okay, we don't know, but these plans that you have submitted are not the plans that you actually have to build unless we put them in our motion.
The reason I gave those to you is because we plan on building that as just the base and then expounding on it.
But you're not bound to it. Because these are just renderings.
Well, if that's what I'm giving you, that's what we're gonna plan on building, yes.
Okay, so we can make that part of any motion.
You could.
Okay.
Well, again, we can't, because again, we could recommend the city council do that.
Yeah, we're
And even
stuck.
there, like, we're 2 steps away from that, because we'd have to recommend that with the zoning, and again, I just feel like it's a lot to put into a hat to try to get it to be R4. I mean, R4 historically, and please correct me, I thought R4 was basically made to kind of fit the more eclectic criteria of like the Garrison neighborhood once upon a time, because we have some areas in Portage that are older than the city itself, and R4 really meets those areas as they already were. But I mean, it's like we say, for it to be an inner, what was the term, like inner, like city type spot. Yeah, and this is not the inner city of Portage, this is the far out southern tip. I mean, this is really like out of place compared to where we actually have R4 zoning in our city. It's mostly the Garrison neighborhood and a sliver of land off of McCool, which again, both of those are older than the city itself. R4 usually exists in Portage, as I understand it, please correct me when I'm done, but if needed. R4 usually exists when you have a new house or 2 new houses getting built in those areas that are historically older than the rest of the city. Usually new land in Portage, or land that's for new development, it's usually either already zoned R2 or it's zoned R1. R1 being the most restrictive. Sometimes when the developer comes in, they say, oh, you know, we need R2. They'll come back, but again, they come back to the Plan Commission, and then we actually have a public hearing about it. See, that's the thing that's tough about this too, is there's no public hearing. Normally when you're doing something like this that impacts the property values, the traffic and things with the people nearby, we'd be able to get that input from the people who live nearby. But the way that this is set up, we're not able to get that here. That's not the petitioner's fault, by the way. It's just to say that for us to give it R4, which would be pretty extraordinary compared to what R4 is for, it's just a lot that they're asking for us and for what we're putting on the people nearby without those usual procedures we have, like public hearings, zoning change petitions, and like you mentioned, the BZA. Because sometimes you might have something zoned R2 and you can get what you want by going to the BZA for some variances, but this is a really big step, and I would remind the commission, we actually had a different petitioner earlier, either this year or at the end of last year, who was trying to also do an R4 neighborhood over by the Coles area.
Yes.
And we flat out recommended no to the city council for a lot of the same issues we're talking about here. So it's just something for us to be aware of with the history and purpose of R4, as opposed to doing something new, with it.
If I might, the reason that we're asking for R4 zoning is because that would be a single zone for the entire subdivision. Now, that being said, the reason you have an annexation agreement in front of you and all of this paperwork is because that is what we are going to be bound to with the city. We are not going to be able to arbitrarily just build right to R4 standards. I want everybody to be very clear on that. We are going to be bound by the signed annexation agreement with the side yards, front yards, rear yards. This concept plan, generally, we're going to be bound by. So I want everybody to understand that R4 was the simplest way to accommodate this actual development, although we are going to exceed almost every R4 standard per the annexation agreement. And there was a public hearing held, just so everybody knows. The city council held a public hearing for the annexation, although did not introduce the annexation ordinance because of the required step to come to the planning commission.
And I didn't say that there wasn't a public hearing held for the annexation. I'm talking about when you normally do a zoning change from like R2 to something else, or R1 to something else. Do we have any minutes of people who spoke at the city council meeting? As far as if anybody came up and spoke for or against the petition when the annexation was proposed? I guess I'm asking, did anybody come up and speak, and do we have record of that? Okay.
So yes and yes.
Oh,
So yes, people spoke.
okay.
And there are minutes.
Okay. We don't have it here with us, though.
Didn't know that was going to be a question,
Oh, yeah. That's fair.
but we can provide that if need be. Gene and I believe I don't remember which meeting this was held at, but probably subsequently the city council approved the minutes of those meetings. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know.
That's all right. We've got enough to talk about here.
So
But
Commissioner Austin, you can get, or Michael, you can get that information.
sure. I don't think we need to wait. I just want to make sure I clarify that there was a public hearing held for the annexation. It's just not the same as a zoning change that we usually do. Yeah.
I'm really concerned with the zoning. That is a 2-lane road, adding 240 more cars on it, with drainage ditches on both sides. So who's gonna take care of all the drainage ditches?
We won't have a drainage ditch on our side. That's going to be.
I know, but after that leaves your property, who's gonna make it safe east and west of where the property is? Because where do bikes ride? On 700.
Where do bikes ride on 700? I'm not sure. I think that's why the request of the park up north was made, that there are future plans for a bicycle pedestrian
Yeah.
path to connect there. I don't know that for a fact. I mean, that's what I was kind of led to believe, and that's why the location of the park is drawn
No,
towards that.
I mean, people ride their bikes. I would never ride a bike on 700 North, because there is nowhere to pull over. The car has to stay behind you and go around,
Or you end up in the ditch.
or you end up in the ditch.
Well, that's across our property. I think what she's referring to is beyond our property.
Is beyond, because if people are
But we can't
riding,
control that.
if we had 240 homes, so that would be 480 possible cars added. It's just not a nice road to, it's narrow with ditches on both sides. That's why I'm concerned about that type of zoning. You did a lot of figures for the advantage to the city of Portage. Scott, were you able to find out about the impact fee? No. Okay. I've been on 2 impact fee committees, so I think I'm correct in saying that all the impact fees that you would pay with each house as they're built can only be used for new projects. It cannot go into the general fund for the park, and it can't be used as maintenance or anything else for the park.
The impact fee money will not go into the general fund.
Correct.
Usually you'll have a park and recreational fund set up where the impact fee money will be deposited directly into.
Correct.
And that impact fee money can be used for any park purpose, maintenance, new park construction.
I don't think that's right.
You guys are talking cross purposes. You're correct. It's not going to get paid into the general fund. Denise is correct. Our local ordinance that was passed, the park impact fee, once you make the deposit, the deposit that as soon as this moves forward, then goes into that fund and then follows the ordinance. And I believe our current makeup of the ordinance requires it to be used for new projects.
Oh, so you put that restriction on yourself?
Correct.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just not money. It would have to be for a new project.
I mean, I think that would be fine if the city wanted to use it.
Well, if we don't use it, then we lose it
You lose it. You forfeit
for our
park
matching
impact?
funds.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you forfeit park impact fee money?
The last time we had a committee for the impact fees, right. So we had lost money because we did not make an application every year.
Well, we're relitigating the ancient past. There was a period of time that the city didn't update the park impact fee ordinance.
Correct.
There was a period of
Oh,
time
then you
that
can't
lapsed.
collect it, yeah.
Or current, city of Portage is current with the park impact fee ordinance.
They are now.
The city of Portage is current with the park impact fee ordinance.
Okay.
I see that with the plan you guys have, it has, I think there's 3 spots where the road seems to end. Is there plans for future development? I know that would probably require a future annexation in any case, but is there any plan with that, with this development?
We actually were asked that question at the city council meeting, and we have on multiple occasions approached this owner over here to buy. And when we were asked at the council meeting if we would be interested in the property around us, my answer was real simple. We're always interested in property, especially property that lies directly adjacent to what we're developing. So yes, we are actively pursuing this piece right here and around our development. It's just that we haven't had a lot of luck with people selling yet.
Sure.
So I mean, I can't control
No,
that.
that's a fair answer, and as a businessman, I get it. So I'm just curious when I
So
see
no,
it
we
there.
are
Yeah.
actively pursuing the property around us, and that's why you see obviously stubs. So.
Say a couple of years, let's say in 1 or 2 years, I'm just making up a number, that property, they're willing to sell it to you and you guys want to come back. Is there anything about this agreement now that would make it easier for you to annex, or you got to go through this exact same process? Does it get easier, or?
The only thing that would make it a lot easier is I could do it in one annexation. I wouldn't have to do 2, because we would automatically meet the 1/8 contiguity requirement. So
Gotcha.
it would be simpler in respect that same process, but just one annexation, not 2 separate annexations to get to the same place.
You wouldn't have to go 4 acres and 52 acres.
Right. We could just, let's say it was 100 acres, we could just annex all 100 acres at one time.
Thank you.
But we would annex to the city.
Can you tell me how many would be the 50-foot frontage, the 60-foot frontage, and then the,
That's actually right down here. And I know I have that number laid out for you in,
well, you have 70-foot, 50-foot, and 60-foot is combined. It's on your map.
yeah, I know I'm putting my glasses on 1 second.
In your annexation agreement, you state that the single family home would be a maximum, a minimum of 70.
Right.
Go to the larger lots on the way in, but then your
That's right, up here.
lots are 50 to 60 wide. I'm assuming that is the rest
That would be the remainder, yes.
That's 169.
I was just looking for a number because they could all be 50-foot lots. They could be 50 to 60.
Right.
So I was looking for,
The 70-foot lots are obviously in this
Correct.
color right here. And then these range from 50 to 60. Now, I'm contemplating, I know we're showing detention on the bottom here, and we're showing detention and water features throughout. It's quite possible when we get to the actual engineering, this probably will get bigger, which is going to push some lots out. So when we say the maximum of 240, we're kind of contemplating that detention basin. That's just an artist rendering to show what we're actually planning on doing. We haven't engineered it yet, so I'm guessing that that's going to get bigger. And so the detention between the actual homes may get bigger too, because everybody likes having kind of a water feature in their backyard. It's just kind of nice where you're separate from your neighbor behind you, and it just makes things a little nicer, and people like to take walks around there. I mean, that's what we've seen anyway. So that's why we're trying to spread these water features out throughout the development, just because quality of life and it's more livable for people.
Speaking of what Mr. said before, this property is surrounded by R2 to the north and rural residential to the west, south, and east. The density on this is substantially higher than all of those, with, I guess, the most stringent of those two would be R2, which requires, I think, 80-foot lots.
R1 is 100.
So
Yeah.
R1 is 100. And generally, as you progress away from the city center, usually density declines, gets less and less dense.
Mhm.
This seems far on the other side of a large area of R2, so it doesn't seem like an increase in density really would fit here.
Right, that's exactly what I'm getting at. And again, I understand you guys are trying to have as many lots as you can, whatnot. But for us as a city, and like I say, the history of R4, because it's not as if Portage is in itself a big, urban, type city. R4 really matches some of the places we have that are older than the city itself. And so that's where you're looking at your far west side, your Garrison neighborhood, and then along McCool. I think there's some other spots that are R4, but those are the two main ones that really come to mind when I think of R4. To make a new R4 so far away from those, I just think that that's a big thing being asked when, like you say, we should be going for less density the more we get away from, the city center. And I think R1 actually is what matches the surrounding, properties the most, given that those surrounding properties are themselves rural, county land, compared to, I think it's R2 just north within what's in the actual city.
And would it be in R4, the additional trash, garbage pickup, fire, police?
Yeah. I think the big thing for people to remember is that in Indiana, and this isn't, again, on the petitioner, it's not on us, this is just how it's set up in Indiana. On the whole, cities make more money from business properties than they make from residential properties. Cities exist for their residents, they exist for the neighborhoods they service, but a lot of times when you're talking revenue, it can turn into like eating celery. I'm not sure how scientifically accurate it is. Someone once told me when you're eating celery, you burn more calories eating it than you get from actually eating the celery.
except when you have peanut butter on it.
We got to be mindful, as far as planning goes, we got to be mindful of the amount of neighborhoods that we have in Portage, because every time you have a new neighborhood, yes, you get taxes from it, but you also got to pay then for the additional services for that neighborhood. Now, sometimes we don't have a lot of a choice, because there's land in Portage that's already zoned things like R1, it's already zoned things like R2. So when a petitioner comes, people will say, why does Portage approve so many neighborhoods? A lot of times we don't have a choice as a plan commission, because city council, not you guys now, but like a city council once upon a time, zoned land for residential. So when they come to us, as long as what they propose matches that zoning, we can't say no. Our role is to say whether or not it matches that zoning code, what they're proposing. The trick is with this is new. This isn't land that's already within the city, already zoned residential. This is outside the city. The council has more of a choice, and we've got a stronger choice on what we recommend it to be. And again, we got to be mindful, because again, every new neighborhood, it's great. We want to have a lot of people. We want to have a lot of great culture and community in Portage, but we also got to make sure that we pay for the amounts of people in the neighborhoods we already have, and make sure that we're not straining ourselves, especially building something so new at the very far south end of the city.
Do we have a,
We're not,
I'm sorry.
the annexation agreement.
Right.
per se. We're just making a recommendation.
What it should be if the city council chooses to annex it, yeah.
And we have the choice to not give a recommendation.
Right, but when I asked our attorney that earlier at this meeting, he said that we need to be mindful, I believe you said that if we don't give a recommendation, it's not as if it automatically becomes R1, like I thought it might have said in there. If we don't give a recommendation, I think the city council will do whatever they want to do. I think it sounds like it's in our interest to at least recommend something, but I could be wrong. Was that right, Scott?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Do we have an estimate of what this annexation is going to cost the city?
There we go. That's what I wanted to ask.
No.
Is there a ballpark figure or a estimate that, because we're looking at annexation here, that the city uses to say if we annex X amount of acres, it's going to cost the city an estimated X amount of dollars per acre for city services like police, fire protection, those kind of things on a yearly basis? Do we have any kind of number like that for the city?
I would ask the city council, we don't.
We don't.
I mean, the planning commission doesn't have that, and the planning staff isn't in charge of that. I mean, when the city council annexes, that would be a city council function.
I think one thing to think about is take the number that they're proposing, which is, according to this, about 233, could be more like 240, and of course it'll depend on what changes when it's being engineered, but I mean, I would at least take that number and, multiply it by 1.5, multiply it by 2, just because you're talking, it's going to be potentially a lot of couples, moving in, they might have children, so it's not just that we're thinking, acreage, we're thinking about the number of families that this
Right.
will be bringing in.
Because they initially, I mean, and let me first say this, so there's no anything considered here. As Councilmember Luke Wyman, I do know Joseph Stanoff. He actually rewrote my will.
Great to
My
see you
wife and
again.
I. It's good to see you, Joe.
How you
Some
doing tonight?
5 years ago, so
Yeah.
just put that out there. I'm aware who he is.
Gotcha.
But initially, they presented that, if I remember the number correctly, $312,000 in taxes to the city of Portage. I presume that was a yearly number?
That's an annual number.
That's an annual number, okay. So and that's with this many houses on there.
Correct.
And if it was less houses, obviously that number would come down.
Correct.
And the number was based off of real estate taxes?
That was based off of the net assessed value, correct?
Yes. We analyzed the surrounding area and we took an average assessed value, then we applied the local tax rate to it. That's kind of how you get
No, I
the
understand,
number.
I
So,
understand.
yeah, it's pretty close.
Okay.
I think the question I've got though is the surrounding area, when it comes to the homes, that's a different zoning. Those are bigger lots. They're really designed more for families that are going to stay for a longer stretch of time. When you're talking something this big with these small lots, I mean, I understand that, yeah, if that's your number and it stays that way and stays consistent, but I mean, I'm concerned about the property values of these going down over time.
Your properties around this area though, your average net assessment is 207. This development coming in, your average assessed development is 272.
For
So it's
now, but I mean, property
$70,000.
values can change over time, especially when a neighborhood has a lot of people moving in, a lot of people moving out. I mean, some of that, doesn't it play a
I
role?
would have to object to that. because-
I don't know, I'm asking you, yeah.
Yeah, we've not experienced any transients, I guess we'll use that term, in developments like this. These homes are going to, where we're actually building these, I know it's hard to believe, but they're getting awfully expensive, and all homes are expensive right now, so there's no doubt about it. But we're not experiencing any sort of transient behavior in any of our subdivisions that we're doing, even like this. We have a lot of them going on. The homes are all upscale. Everybody takes care of them. They don't. And I mean, as far as an HOA goes, we've been running HOAs now for 20 years. That is a deed restriction that goes right on that property. You can't get out of the HOA. You simply can't do it anymore. It's not the they're not the HOAs of old, believe me. It's all new now. So the HOA is not going anywhere.
In most, if not all, new developments are coming in as HOAs.
Right. We're almost mandated to put HOAs in now whenever we develop anywhere, because the city doesn't want to assume the maintenance responsibilities. And when we were at the
If you make a
city,
mistake.
and it was made real clear that when we wanted to put that park in, that's why we came up with a theme for the subdivision, and we're calling it the Bauer Farm. Because we have a piece of park equipment, there may be, I think I put a picture in there of what we're planning on building. And our roads are gonna have that same theme name. And that's what we were asked to just present a nice theme subdivision, something different. So that's kind of what we came up with. Now, I had a forest ranger theme, I had a farm theme, I didn't know. And so we bought it from Bauer, so I was trying to get creative here, and I said, oh boy, this is not my strongest suit. So that's why the park theme seemed to be kind of cool, and everybody I checked with kind of liked it. So I said, well, let's move forward with that. And all the street names will match and everything. So that's why we decided on that theme.
Well, getting back to the difference between St. John Dyer area is where you've been mostly, correct?
Well, we're actually we're in Valparaiso right now, and we're doing a lot in Hebron right now too.
Okay.
So we're in Porter County.
In Belleville. Now, with the smaller lots, there's two subdivisions. One is Burns Harbor, right on 12. With the smaller lots, that subdivision sat for over 12 years with nothing going up except the first initial. It really sat for 12 years. The second one is Villages of Sand Creek. Those also have smaller lots, and that sat, I mean, I don't know how many times I was invited to meet and greet out there with what they were building, but that probably also sat for over 10 years. When you're coming in with an R4 on the south side of Route 6, I don't see Portage people accepting that.
Could you clarify that, please? Accepting, like,
They're-
they don't want to live there, you think?
They're
or-
looking for larger lots. Frontage and side. You're gonna have a 5-foot setback on the side yard, so if I'm getting a pool and they need to drive a truck through, I have to have my truck coming to my backyard, get permission from my neighbor, because a truck won't fit on a 5-foot
Well,
setback.
there's going to be no pools down below. That's going to be in the covenants and restrictions.
See, we didn't know that.
Yeah, there's going to be no pools. We know that. We take that into account when we do this. For instance, Hebron, for example. We just received zoning, and you know Hebron's fairly rural. I would consider a lot more rural than Portage.
Right.
And they just gave us a similar type zoning for 500 units. And all these questions came up, and we said, well, we addressed that in our covenants and restrictions, and we understood that, yeah, this section's not gonna have, you can't have pools here. And also you have to remember that the 5-foot side yards only come into play when you want third-car garage. Now, not everybody wants a 3-car garage. Not everybody has the same needs. So you could have a 5-foot side yard in this house, and you can have 8 or 10 over here next to it. So that'll give you 15 total. So it's not just this 5, 5, 5, 5.
But you
I
still
think
have to
everybody's
get permission
picturing.
from your neighbor. I mean,
But again, you'll not really have that
not
problem
if I'm
up
not doing
here.
a pool. What if somebody's gonna come in and pour a larger patio, concrete pad? Do you have to get the concrete truck with the
No,
arm?
you're gonna, the concrete patios are going to be part of the package.
I know, but what if I want a bigger one? There's just no access to the backyards.
You're
with their
just gonna have to
5-foot.
probably, like everybody else would, if you want, let's say you wanted to add maybe 4 foot onto your patio, they would dig it out and they would wheelbarrow the concrete back, like they do now.
Yeah, well, we don't have it now, so we don't have 5-foot.
Yeah, but I mean, I've watched
We're in such the initial phase right now, we're just trying to get annexed into the city.
Right, and that's why we're concerned, because you're asking for an R4.
Well, and I think I'm a little, if you can clarify on the covenants then, because you're saying the covenants, they haven't been written, but you know kind of what direction you're going?
Yeah, I
or-
kinda know what I'm doing, yeah.
But at the same time, and again, this is just something that we got to do with our due diligence as a plan commission. It's not you, it's any developer. It's like, if if the city council goes and zones this for R4, they can come back and they can propose anything that's involved with the R4. I don't believe, or help me out, Scott, like what can we do in the future? Like if this were to get rezoned as R4, they come with a plan, we don't like something,
Let me try to make this make a little bit more sense.
yeah.
This originally was going to try to be a PUD.
Okay? The PUD did not work because trying to do a land use development at the same time you're doing an annexation, those two statutes just don't really work that well together. Because you got annexation statute requires from the moment the petition is filed to the moment it comes to a head, so to speak, is on a time track. The PUD itself, processed through Planning Commission and City Council, has a completely separate time track. Those things don't go together. So the attempt here was to, by the petitioner, is to file the annexation and then put different restrictions and commitments within the annexation agreement to basically attempt to build something that looked like the PUD through these restrictions, which is why we have the ranges, and which is why we have the different sizes of the side yard setbacks and the lot widths. So, to answer your question directly, it's not exactly just R4 standards. It's R4 standards unless superseded by this annexation agreement.
My concern with it being R4, like you said, many more homes, it's gonna be more pressure on the street department, especially garbage pickup. For instance, now being the first of the month when they're doing the bulk, that really overloads them. Plowing, our fire department, and our police. I mean, we're not saying that there's gonna be any crime, but they're easily, it's still gonna cause more. And will we be able to afford the additional?
That's why I was asking, do we have a ballpark figure of what it's, you know, when you're looking at $312,000 in taxes a year, does that cover police, fire, and those kind of services, okay, for the year? Or is it costing us, it'll actually cost us $500,000 to have proper services there for those homes, okay? And that's what I was trying to see if we had if the city actually had you know, we have X amount of, police, this is the budget we have for the police, this is the budget we have for the fire department, and this is the acreage we have for Portage, and therefore you divide the numbers, blah, 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 and you come up with a number. Okay, I don't even know if that's possible, or if they even have something like that. I think it's possible. I don't know if we have just an idea, would this annexation require us to have 2 more police officers? And what would that cost? 2 more firemen, or another fire truck, or another firehouse? Because of the distance, I don't know.
Well, we're having some stress in the city of Portage already when it comes to the need for mutual aid, which again, it's great that our fire departments do that and they take care of each other, but our city services have been stressed, and there's a lot of reasons about what got us to that spot, but adding a new neighborhood with a lot of homes and a lot more people, it is gonna, of course, add more stress to the current city services. I mean, that's just a fact.
I'm all for the annex, as long as it's not gonna cost the city money on one reason. The other part is, my other concern is the size of the setbacks, because when I think in my mind and try to visualize this, okay, these 2 tables in the front, I believe, are 6-foot tables. That's 12 feet. So I got a wall here for a building. I got a wall on the other side of my brain just died, Austin. Okay, on the other side, all right, and there's 2 buildings there, and this is the only, and these are 12 foot. So I added 2 feet, all right, and that's all we have. For between the 2, each house, on average, actually less, right? And to me, when I look at that, I say, okay, I see nothing but poacher stamp houses, just tight to me in my mind. And that concerns me for a look for Portage.
No, and I understand. I think I would like to try to answer this question.
I think the chairman wants to clarify something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
These aren't 6 foot.
What are they, 8?
They're 8 or 10.
They're 8 foot.
They're 8
8
foot.
foot? I don't know,
Who's
I'm guessing 6.
foot?
I have no
Because your
idea.
arms equal.
I'm not 6 foot.
They're 8 foot tables.
Okay, so they're 8 foot, so they're 6 foot.
Your table's 6 foot.
Scott's on a 6 foot.
Scott, you're on a 6
Scott,
foot.
you're on
You're
a
on a
6
different
foot.
size table.
They're on 8 footers.
We're on 8 footers, so that's even bigger.
So that's 3 of the
That's
setbacks.
16 feet versus 10 feet.
Right.
Yeah, and that's even more tight.
And you stress on how many families are wanting the smaller homes and so forth, but we're also talking families with children and school. And how is that going to affect our school system?
We haven't noticed, when we were doing our research, we haven't noticed any issues with the school system, if you will. And as far as like public works, police, fire, and everything like that, when we were looking at the police department and fire department, I mean, the fire department has 62 members. 75% of the services are EMS related, which is typical of any fire department. The present manpower of the department could handle this. This is a very small area when you take into consideration it's a small percentage of what fire department looks at. The police department also, I mean, you guys have 67 full-time officers. There would not need to be anybody added or any additional police officers to just provide patrol here. As far as the snow plowing goes, when I talked to the various department heads, they indicated that the trash pickup, snow plow would just be, because like I said, really there's only 1.75 miles of street. That's not much. So the existing manpower and routes that you have, this would just be added to one of those routes. It wouldn't require additional equipment. Now, if you get into a very large annexation, let's say we wanted to come in and annex 1,000 acres. Now, that in itself would require a whole new truck, a new driver, a new, you know what it just depends on how much we're bringing in. But this little annexation is not going to stress the services to the point where obviously you're gonna have to add those things. Now, the additional tax revenue.
Now, and I just want to stress again, this is a great question. However, it is firmly in the fiscal body's power and authority and duty to do this part. We're here to say, this is too dense, not too dense, it's okay. It's not to determine whether we need another fireman or another police officer or whether or not the garbage can get picked up. That is, we don't have that information for a reason because we're not the city council. We don't have a department head sitting out here giving us reports on whether or not that works or doesn't work. So we are flying blind. So I'm asking again to consider getting back to what we're comfortable with. Does this board think that this property should be R4, R3, R2, R1, C4, whatever? We know what they're requesting, but what does this board want the underlying zoning to be? Because ultimately, again, and I'm not trying to make light of this, the questions are more than valid. But we don't have the answers here because this board's not set up to have those answers.
So if it's all right to try to potentially save some time, because I think a lot of great questions have been asked and we've been going at this a while, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we send the City Council a recommendation that should they decide to annex this property, our recommendation would be R1.
We have a motion.
Is 100-foot frontage?
Yes. That is the,
What about R2 is 80 foot?
So under normal circumstances in Portage that I've seen, we usually start with R1. A developer would determine whether or not they think that they can do it, and then they'll usually come and ask for a zoning change to R2 or something else down the road. I think starting out though, this is the furthest point from our city. It's the area that we think should be the least dense. The least dense zoning that we have is R1. You're welcome to vote no, but I'd like to make a motion that we recommend R1 should the council decide to annex it. I'll see if I get a second.
I'll second it.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Mr. Monroe, could you call roll?
Yes. Austin Bonta?
Yes.
Gina Geis first?
Yes.
Samuel Lloyd?
Yes.
Hortensio Moreno?
Yes.
Charles Thompson?
Yes.
Luke Wyman?
Yes.
Kevin Witherspoon?
Yes.
Denise Little?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A little bit, I guess. But it's still part of the decision-making process. Right. It's 100-foot frontage. Yeah. I think all the time, 80-foot.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn, or who's it, Kevin?
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.